I still remember the chill that ran through me when I first heard about the case of Samantha Runnion. It was a summer day in 2002, and the news broke like a thunderclap. A 5-year-old girl snatched right from her front yard while playing a simple game with her friend. The abductor, a stranger in a green car, had lured her with a lie about a lost puppy, then grabbed her tiny arm and forced her inside. Her screams echoed briefly before the car sped away, leaving her playmate frozen in terror. But what haunts me most is the image of her small, naked body, discovered the next day, on a remote mountain trail, as if to taunt those who would find her. Who could commit such an act against an innocent child? And why did the system fail to stop him before it was too late? Let me take you back to Stanton, California, in the early 2000s. Stanton is a small city in Orange County, about 25 miles southeast of Los Angeles, with a population of around 30,000 at the time. It's the kind of suburban area where people moved for affordable housing and a sense of community, away from the hustle of the big city. The neighborhoods featured rows of apartment complexes, like Garden Grove Village, where rents were reasonable for working families. Palm trees lined the streets, and the warm Mediterranean climate meant kids spent a lot of time outdoors, riding bikes on sidewalks, playing tag in courtyards, or splashing in community pools during the hot summers. In 2002, the nation was still processing the trauma of September 11th, with heightened security at airports and a general air of uncertainty. But in places like Stanton, daily life focused on routine. Parents commuting to jobs in nearby Anaheim or Santa Ana, children attending local schools like Carver Elementary. Cell phones were becoming more common, but not everyone had one, and social media didn't exist yet to spread news instantly. Amber Alerts, a system named after another abducted child, Amber Hagerman, had only been implemented in California a few years earlier, in 1999, and were still relatively new. People in Stanton trusted their surroundings. Doors were often left unlocked during the day, and neighbors looked out for each other. It was a diverse community, Hispanic, Asian, white families living side by side, and crime rates were low compared to urban areas, mostly minor incidents like vandalism or theft from cars. But as with any place, there were undercurrents of risk that went unnoticed until it was too late. Samantha Bree Runnion was born on July 26, 1996, in Boston, Massachusetts, to Aaron Runnion and her then-boyfriend. The family relocated to California when Samantha was young, seeking better opportunities and warmer weather. Aaron, a dedicated mother in her mid-20s, worked as a restaurant manager to support them, often juggling shifts at places like a local Denny's or similar diners. Samantha's father wasn't heavily involved in her daily life, so Aaron raised her with help from her own mother, who provided childcare. They lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in the Garden Grove Village complex on Chapman Avenue, a typical setup with beige stucco buildings, shared lawns, and parking lots where kids drew chalk art. Samantha was a joyful child, described by those who knew her as bubbly and affectionate. She had curly brown hair that framed her face, expressive brown eyes, and a gap-toothed smile from losing her first baby teeth. At 5, she was in kindergarten, excelling in art and making friends easily. Her best friend was Sarah Ahn, the daughter of neighbors, and the two were inseparable, spending afternoons playing dolls, coloring books, or simple board games. Aaron encouraged her independence, teaching her stranger danger basics, but in a safe neighborhood, the lessons felt more like routine than urgent. Weekends might involve trips to nearby Disneyland, just 10 miles away, or picnics in local parks. Life was simple. Mornings with cartoons like SpongeBob, evenings with bedtime stories from books like Goodnight Moon. But even in this picture of normalcy, there were subtle vulnerabilities. Aaron worked long hours, and the complex had transient residents, including visitors who weren't always vetted. As I reflect on these details, it's clear how fragile that bubble of safety was, and how one ordinary day could pierce it forever. The tension in Stanton that summer of 2002 built in ways that seemed insignificant at first. Aaron had occasionally noticed unfamiliar cars idling in the parking lot, or strangers walking through the complex. But in a busy area near major roads like Beach Boulevard, it didn't raise alarms. Reports from neighbors mentioned a man asking about children or pets, but these were dismissed as odd rather than threatening. Samantha and Sarah played outside almost every day after school or on weekends, their giggles a familiar sound in the courtyard. On July 15, 2002, it was a Monday like any other. Temperatures hovering around 90 degrees Fahrenheit, the air thick with humidity from the Pacific coast. The girls had finished lunch and were outside by 3 p.m., setting up their board game on the concrete stoop near Building 25. Aaron was inside the apartment, about 20 feet away, preparing spaghetti for dinner and checking on them through the window every few minutes. She had reminded them to stay close and not talk to strangers, a standard caution. Around 4:30 p.m., as the sun began to dip slightly, a green Honda Civic approached slowly along the internal road. The driver, a man in his late 20s with olive skin, short black hair, a thin mustache, and wearing a plain shirt, rolled down his window. He spoke to the girls in English, but with a noticeable Spanish accent, asking if they had seen his lost Chihuahua. Sarah, shy by nature, stayed quiet and shook her head. Samantha, always eager to help animals, she loved dogs and had begged Aaron for a pet, responded politely, saying no, but offering to look around. He persisted, describing the dog as small and cute, then claiming it might be behind the nearby fence. Encouraged, Samantha stood up and walked a few steps toward the car to peer over. In that instant, the man exited the vehicle quickly, grabbed her left arm firmly, and pulled her toward the passenger side. She resisted, screaming for help and kicking, but at 35 pounds, she was no match for his strength. He forced her into the car, slammed the door, and accelerated away, heading east toward the main road. Sarah, petrified, watched for a second before bolting inside to her grandmother, yelling that a man had taken Samantha and he had no dog. The entire encounter lasted less than a minute, but it set off a chain of events that would grip the nation. What strikes me now is how the abductor exploited a child's compassion, a trait Aaron had nurtured, and how those few seconds of hesitation changed everything. But had he chosen them specifically, or was it opportunity? As the reality sank in, the sequence of events accelerated with heartbreaking precision. Aaron, alerted by Sarah's cries and her grandmother's shouts, burst out the door, scanning the empty courtyard in disbelief. Her mind raced. Maybe Samantha had run off playing. But Sarah's tearful recounting confirmed the worst. Aaron dialed 911 at 4:35 p.m., her voice trembling as she reported the abduction, describing the man from Sarah's words. Not black, not white, possibly Hispanic, with a green car like an old Honda. Stanton police arrived within 5 minutes, securing the scene and interviewing Sarah, who provided remarkably clear details for a 5-year-old. The man's appearance, his accent, the car's color and approximate model, a 2-door Civic from the 90s. Word spread quickly through the complex. Neighbors gathered, some recalling a similar vehicle lurking earlier that week. By 5 p.m., an Amber Alert was issued, one of the first in Orange County, broadcasting the description on radio, TV, and highway signs. Child abduction. 5-year-old white female, brown hair, brown eyes, last seen in Stanton. Helicopters from the Orange County Sheriff's Department circled overhead, their rotors a constant hum as dusk fell. Volunteers from the community joined searches in nearby parks and alleys, flashlight beams cutting through the growing darkness. Aaron, in shock, gave interviews to arriving media, her face pale as she begged, "Please, if you have her, let her go. She's just a little girl." The abductor's motive remained unknown at this point. No note, no call, but investigators suspected a sexual predator, given the boldness. Small clues emerged. A witness saw the green car speeding on Catella Avenue toward the freeway. But as hours passed without a sighting, hope dimmed. I can't help but think about the what-ifs. What if Aaron had been outside? What if Sarah had screamed sooner? The unease in Stanton was palpable. Parents called their kids inside early, and the once vibrant courtyards fell silent. The crime itself was carried out with chilling efficiency, revealing a perpetrator who had evaded justice before. The abductor, Alejandro Avila, a 27-year-old factory mechanic from Lake Elsinore, drove Samantha approximately 50 miles southeast to a rugged, isolated area in the Cleveland National Forest, near Ortega Highway in Riverside County. This remote spot, accessible only by dirt roads winding through pine-covered mountains, was chosen for its seclusion, far from witnesses, with poor cell signal and few hikers in mid-July heat. Arriving around 6 p.m., Avila parked and took Samantha into the woods. There, he sexually assaulted her, committing 2 counts of lewd acts on a minor under 14. The assault lasted an unknown duration, but evidence later showed she fought back, scratches on his arms and face, her nails embedded with his skin cells. Overpowered, she was then strangled, her cause of death listed as asphyxiation due to manual compression of the neck. In a final act of cruelty, Avila stripped her clothes, posed her body face up on the trail with legs apart and arms outstretched, as if displaying his crime. He left no clothing or items behind, perhaps to delay identification, then drove back home by 8 p.m., stopping to wash his car at a self-serve station in Corona to remove fingerprints and fibers. Avila had rented a motel room in Riverside that afternoon, possibly where part of the assault occurred, though forensics couldn't confirm. The entire act was premeditated. He had cased the apartment complex, knowing his ex-girlfriend's nieces played there, and targeted vulnerable children. No financial motive, this was driven by pedophilic urges. Factually, Avila's sloppiness, leaving DNA semen on her thigh and tire tracks matching his Honda Accord, would prove his downfall. But the planning showed experience. He had been accused in 2001 of molesting 2 girls, ages 8 and 9, but acquitted when the jury found insufficient corroboration. That verdict allowed him freedom, leading directly to Samantha's fate. As I lay out these steps, the question nags, how many red flags were ignored? The immediate aftermath brought waves of grief and chaos. On July 16th, around 11 a.m., 2 hang glider pilots soaring over the forest spotted what looked like a child's body from 500 feet up. One radioed 911. "We see something that appears to be a small, deceased person, naked, possibly a young female." Riverside County Sheriff's deputies hiked to the site, confirming it was Samantha, her body exposed to the elements overnight, with rigor mortis set in and early decomposition from the heat. The posing suggested the killer wanted discovery, perhaps for notoriety. Autopsy by the coroner detailed the horrors: ligature marks on her neck, bruising from restraint, semen evidence, and defensive wounds. Erin was notified at home, surrounded by family. She collapsed, screaming in anguish, later saying it felt like her soul was ripped out. The community reeled. Vigils formed that evening at the apartment complex, hundreds lighting candles, placing stuffed animals and flowers at a makeshift memorial. Media descended. National networks like ABC, NBC aired live from Stanton, interviewing tearful neighbors who called Samantha everyone's little girl. The story dominated headlines. Innocent child slain after abduction. Nation mourns Samantha, amplifying public fear. In Southern California, parents restricted outdoor play. Schools sent safety letters home, and false sightings overwhelmed hotlines. Confusion arose from early misreports. A white van, initially mentioned, later corrected. Rewards from the FBI and private donors reached $160,000. The human impact was profound. Sarah underwent therapy for PTSD, replaying the screams. Aaron's mother blamed herself for not watching closer. Yet, amid despair, solidarity emerged. Strangers donated to search funds, churches held prayer services. What stands out is how one act rippled outward, exposing vulnerabilities in child protection laws and community vigilance. But the hunt for the killer pressed on, with many wondering if he'd strike again. The police investigation unfolded methodically, fueled by public pressure and solid leads. Orange County Sheriff Mike Corona held daily press conferences declaring, "We will not rest until this monster is caught." A joint task force with FBI, Riverside sheriffs, and local PDs formed, sifting 3,200 tips in the first week. Sarah's sketch, created with a child psychologist, depicted a Latino man, 25 to 35, 5 feet 8 inches, 160 pounds, with black hair and mustache, circulated nationwide. Forensics were key. DNA from semen and nail scrapings sent to labs for rush analysis. Tire tracks identified as from a 1990 to 1994 Honda Civic or Accord. Vehicle canvases checked thousands of green Hondas in the area. Breakthrough came July 18th. Multiple tips pointed to Avila. His ex-girlfriend Esther Granados lived in the complex, and he visited her nieces often. Callers noted his green 1990 Honda Accord matched the description, with recent scratches. Surveillance confirmed. Avila worked at a label factory in Anaheim, but had the afternoon off July 15th. Arrested July 19th at his Lake Elsinore apartment, he was calm, denying involvement. Search warrant yielded damning evidence. Child magazines, fibers matching Samantha's clothes in his car trunk, fresh arm scratches. DNA results returned July 22nd matched with astronomical certainty, 1 in 230 trillion for the nails. Mistakes occurred. Early focus on a white male suspect wasted hours, and the 2001 acquittal highlighted prosecutorial flaws, victims' testimonies deemed inconsistent. Interrogations. Avila claimed he was job hunting, but cell records placed him near Stanton. He broke slightly when confronted with DNA, but maintained innocence. The prior case loomed. Avila molested Granados' nieces in 2000, charged in 2001, but jury acquitted due to no physical evidence and doubts about coaching. Investigators lamented, better handling then might have prevented this. The arrest eased some fear, but left unanswered. Were there more victims? The courtroom phase brought closure, though laced with pain. Avila's preliminary hearing in August 2002 bound him over for trial on charges of kidnapping, 2 counts of lewd acts on a child under 14, and murder with special circumstances, murder during kidnap and lewd acts, making him death eligible. Trial started April 11, 2005, in Orange County Superior Court, Santa Ana, before Judge William Froberg. Prosecutor Dave Brent methodically presented evidence: Sarah's eyewitness testimony, identifying Avila in a lineup, DNA expert explaining the match, motel receipt from July 15th in Riverside, timestamped 2 p.m., car fibers and tire casts linking to the forest. Defense attorney James Bisno countered with contamination theories, DNA transferred innocently, and alibi witnesses claiming Avila was at a job interview, though timelines didn't align. Cross-examinations were tense. Sarah, now 8, bravely recounted the abduction, breaking down as she said, "He took my friend." Aaron testified about Samantha's life, showing photos of her smiling, voice cracking as she described the last hug. Avila sat impassively. No apology. Closing arguments. Brent called him a child's worst nightmare. Bisno urged doubt. On May 11th, after 10 hours of deliberation, the jury convicted on all counts. Penalty phase began May 16th. Aggravation included the crime's brutality, prior accusations, though not convictions admissible. Mitigation cited Avila's abusive childhood in Mexico, poverty, alcoholism in family. Witnesses. Victims from 2001 testified to pattern. Aaron's impact statement pleaded for death, saying Samantha deserved to grow up. On May 23rd, jury recommended death after 4 hours. Sentencing, August 26th. Froberg imposed death, plus life terms, calling it heinous. Appeals followed automatically. Realistically, California's death row means long waits. Over 700 inmates, no executions since 2006 due to legal challenges. Justice was clear, but slow. Aaron noted it provided accountability, not healing. As of 2026, Alejandro Avila, now 51, remains on death row at San Quentin State Prison, his case stagnant amid California's execution moratorium since 2019. Appeals were denied. California Supreme Court affirmed conviction and sentence in 2014, citing overwhelming evidence. Federal habeas petitions rejected in 2020 for lack of constitutional errors. No new evidence has surfaced. No confessions to other crimes, though suspicions linger about unsolved child cases in Riverside County. The impact endures. Aaron's Joyful Child Foundation, founded 2002, has educated over 1 million on child safety through programs like Samantha's Pride, teaching kids to yell for help. Samantha's Law, 2003, mandates lifetime GPS tracking for high-risk sex offenders in California, inspired by Avila's acquittal. Long-term effects. Aaron remarried, had 2 more daughters, and authored Samantha's Gift, 2004, channeling grief into advocacy. She speaks at conferences, lobbying for victim rights. Sarah, now in her late 20s, lives privately, reportedly pursuing counseling to help others. Stanton honors Samantha with a park bench plaque. The complex installed better lighting. Public memory has faded somewhat, but the case shaped abduction protocols. Amber Alerts now nationwide, saving thousands. For families like Aaron's, the pain is eternal, a reminder of lost innocence. Yet her legacy is prevention. As Aaron says, Samantha's light guides us. What are your thoughts on cases like this, or on the death penalty moratorium? If any facts here seem off, correct me in the comments. I strive for accuracy based on public records. Thanks for joining me through this somber recounting. If it resonated, please like, comment your views, share with others, and subscribe for more respectful true crime stories. Take care.